G'day and welcome to the Grow a Small Business Podcast. I'm your host, Troy Truen. Each week, we speak with an owner who has grown a business with 5 to 30 team members to something bigger. Diving into their numbers and unearthing the pain they've experienced, we explore what they did to overcome each barrier and what they would do differently from day one. Let's get into it. Welcome everyone. Today I'm interviewing Andy Cabasso from Postaga, based in Long Island, United States. Thanks for your time today, Andy.
Thanks, Troy. Happy to be here.
Let's start with how we know each other. So back in January, so 6 months ago now, you reached out on email and thought you'd be a great guest for our audience.
Yep, that's right. And happy to finally be here, able to talk to you.
And tell our audience a bit about your business, what it does and how it makes money.
Sure. So today I run a company called Postaga, which is a platform that helps you with cold email outreach, which is actually what I use to find and connect with you.
Yep.
Our main users are people in doing sales lead generation, doing digital PR, and also people in the digital marketing space doing link building outreach. And so our platform helps you with everything from prospecting to find the right people, finding their contact details, and then pitching and following up.
Great. Maybe explain to the audience how that actually works.
Sure. So let's say, for example, getting a little bit meta here, that I want to go on podcasts to increase my brand awareness and all of that. We have in our platform a search engine related to finding podcasts, for example, as well as like sales leads and link building resources and things like that. And so if I want to find startup or marketing focused podcasts, we've got a big list of them. And then from there, we can find the contact information for the right people at these businesses. And then we've got the ability to create personalized email sequences for each of these contacts.
Yep.
And so the very important thing about this is personalization, because if you've been running a business long enough, you've gotten really, really bad generic cold emails, and I hate those. And so it's very important that if you're doing any sort of cold emailing, that it really is personalized, because it significantly makes a difference on how successful it's going to be.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And how did you start out?
So it started out because years ago I used to run a digital agency, which I started, grew, and then eventually sold successfully. And as my co-founder and I, after the exit, we were like tossing ideas around. And one thing that kind of came up was that when we were trying to do link building for our agency, for ourselves and for our clients, and if you're not really familiar, link building is basically the idea of getting other websites to link to your website, because ultimately that helps your website rank better in search engine results, which means more web traffic for you and more customers for you and more money for you. And so the way to do good, effective link building necessitates reaching out to and connecting with other websites to pitch them your content or partnerships or guest posts for them so that they can link to your content. But the tools that we were seeing that were available to do that sort of thing were very disjointed and not very scalable for agencies looking to do this for themselves and for their clients. And we wish there was a better way to do that. And that's why we built Postaga.
Great. And out of interest, your co-founder in Postaga, was that also a co-founder or your co-founder in the digital agency?
Yes, that's right. My co-founder, Sam, actually was my roommate in university, and we took very different paths. He was studying music industry. I was studying business. I then went to law school, and then during that time realized I didn't want to be practicing law. I made a huge mistake. And he became a freelancer. And then we met up years later and kind of realized that we could be working together. In particular, we started a digital agency focusing on the legal vertical, and then started that, grew that, sold that, and then worked again together with Postaga.
So you didn't have a real job in between university and the digital agency?
So I did practice law a little bit. And I think, well, I didn't see myself practicing law long term. I had an itch to grow a business, and I saw an opportunity with digital marketing for the legal space. And what kind of started out as a side business, it did well. I did a good job marketing it, and so it went from being a side project to a full-time business.
Yeah, great. And what year did you start that agency, and how old were you?
Oh gosh, how old am I now? Time is. I started the agency probably when I was 25 or 26.
Yep.
And then I sold it at, I think, before I turned 30.
Yep.
And yeah, that was that
What
was
what
that
year was that?
agency. Yeah.
Yeah, did you start?
I started it in, how old am I now? I started around 2012, 2013.
Yep. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And what year did you start Postaga up?
So Postaga we started working on it in 2019. And it was about a year of development and beta testing before we launched it to the public, when we did a big launch on Product Hunt. And from that, we ended up being #1 for the day and #2 for the week that we launched. Was really happy with that. We got a lot of traction. And this was just like our first foray into the world and kind of announcing ourselves. And so yeah, we've been kind of going ever since.
Oh, fantastic. You have some key numbers you can share to illustrate the growth of the business over the 4 years, sorry, 2 years in market, but 3 years since you started it?
Mm-hmm. So in terms of, like, I guess let's talk about like users and things like that. We went from, I guess, by the time we had launched, I think we had about 100 users, that mostly from our free like beta testing and things like that. Like I did a lot of cold outreach to find beta testers for us, find people who were like either at agencies or people looking to do link building and give us feedback on the platform. And then in that first week of our Product Hunt launch, we added 1,000 users to the platform. And
Wow.
today we are over 20,000.
That's
users on the
amazing.
platform.
In just over 2 years of after beta launch, really.
Hmm.
That's well done. That's terrific growth. And what about number of team members you started with? Yourself and your founder?
Yeah. So it started out just me and my co-founder, and I guess we added our first team member a little bit before we hit we had our first full-time team member a little bit before the year mark, and now we are at nine full-time people.
Oh, great. Wonderful growth. And the digital agency, there's again, was it yourself,
Yeah.
Sam, the co-founder, that started that, and how many full-time equivalents did you get up to before you sold?
So it was so it started out, it was just the two of us, and by the time we sold it, there were 5 of us full-time.
Yeah, great. When was the moment you felt like you had succeeded?
Well, with my agency, it was very clear when we sold it. I'm like, all right, great. We sold it for a successful exit that I was very happy about and proud of. And probably up until we sold, I was never sure, like, all right, like we're on a good trajectory. We're growing, great. But if anyone were to ever stop me in the street, or like someone were to stop me at a networking event or something like that and say like, hey, would you call your business a success? I feel like, and I feel like this to this day with my current business as well, like it's just constantly a work in progress. It's something I'm working towards improving. And so like my business is either going to have what success is for me is going to be either a successful exit, or it's going to be at a point where it's on autopilot and I don't think about it when I shut down for the evening or go on vacation, and it's still humming along and doing great and cash flow positive and all of that. And I think that's probably the metric or what you have that I would use. Yeah,
well, that's the next question. What does success look like to you? Which I think you've answered. Number one thing you'd recommend to marketing a fast growing business? Perfect question for you.
Operations, getting your stuff together, knowing your numbers cold, having really set processes for everything, especially as you're growing and growing a business can be a bumpy ride. You could have sudden growth all at once. You could have things stalling at certain points. But if you have all of your processes set in terms of, from like an operations perspective, that helps just so much, because if you get on those waves of sudden growth and you are not disciplined, then it's going to be very tough to hang on. And like you can like ride these waves and feel overwhelmed about, oh, there's so many things going on, there's so many new users, so many things that need my attention. But having good discipline about the business overall is, I think, the kind of the most helpful thing. Knowing your processes, having your, like, if you're using a business operating system, which I would definitely recommend as getting set with as early as you can, like whether it's Traction EOS or Rockefeller Habits scaling up,
Yep.
those can just really help you see the business from a big picture perspective, so you can really work on the business and help the business grow rather than being mired in the day-to-day.
Yep. Totally agree. And Vern Harnish is the author of Rockefeller Habits, a great book, which he then, I think, renamed to Scaling Up, and I guess added to it. I haven't read the second one yet, but absolutely agree. And how did you fund, well, the first business, I guess, and then the second business?
Yep. So my co-founder and I are definitely bootstrappers and have a bootstrap mindset.
Yep.
Our first agency that we built together, we bootstrapped completely. We, in hindsight now, having some seed capital would have been nice that we could have used to kind of invest ahead of time. But we were in the early days, especially, we were getting more projects and only spending what we had in terms of cash flow to support.
Yeah.
And so like every decision that we're making, whether it's like, all right, do we hire someone now? Do we invest in advertising? It had to be something that like we could afford to do, and like we had to take calculated risks. And so that was definitely a challenge in the early days of bootstrapping, especially in the really early days when we're just really trying to ensure that we have positive cash flow that can sustain this. With the current business, Postaga, we've been funding it from kind of a few different sources. One, we had a previous exit with our agency, which we've been using to fund Postaga. We also are semi-bootstrapped in that we have cash flow. We're very disciplined about how we operate, but also another source of funding is we joined a venture accelerator last year called Tiny Seed, which provides some small pre-seed level capital as well.
Oh, great. Fantastic. So haven't taken on any other investors or government money or loans or anything?
No.
Oh, great. If you were to start up today with plenty of funding, would you go into your industry?
Absolutely. Well, part of it is, I know the industry. I am comfortable with it. I would, if anyone's like looking to figure out like what's their next business, I would advise choosing an industry that you know very well, that you're familiar with, and that you have a network and connections with. It makes things much easier than starting from scratch and having to learn the space as you go.
Yeah. Can you outline the most stressful point in your small business growth journey so our audience can learn from it?
A single most stressful point?
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, I guess, back to my like agency days. Like it feels a little bit cliche to say that, like, running a startup in a small business is like often just an emotional roller coaster. You have high highs and low lows. And I remember there was like a point where like we weren't having a great like quarter sales wise. Things just weren't feeling like they were clicking. We were trying a lot of different marketing initiatives, and I was spending a lot of time trying marketing tactics that weren't working. And my co-founder and I were kind of thinking like, well, we're burning cash now, like looking at our runway and like like seeing an end to the runway, realizing, all right, like something like either things have to turn around or we're going to have to call it quits.
Yep.
And just like being faced with that. And it was very tough. Like, and there's like something is just, there's so many things that just are out of your control, despite how much effort and time you put into it. And so it was very stressful, very frustrating. Um,
Did you change
yeah.
anything to get through that time, like pricing or?
So during that time, I think part of it, like I guess part of it was the, like we were kind of casting a very wide net with our marketing strategies, trying out different things, testing different things, hoping that one of them or some of them would stick. And there were a few core pieces of the marketing that were working. And so my co-founder and I just had a meeting. We were realizing, all right, like here's what we're investing in, here's what's not working. So if this is not working and this is working, we need to focus, like we need to really be in cockroach mode, struggling for survival here. We have to focus on what we know is working and invest in that. Like, for example, like our content marketing was working, our email marketing was working, and the attention that I was spending on channels like paid ads, which weren't working for us, and the money that we're spending on it just wasn't working. And so kind of remade our projections and focused on what we did find was working. And we had like early good signs from like a partnership channel. And so we nurtured those more as well. And that made a big impact and kind of turned things around.
What area in business do you feel you've had to work on the most to add the greatest value?
So I am a non-technical person, so I don't touch any code at all. I think in terms of like the things that I spend the most time on, most time thinking about are our marketing and our customers. And so customer acquisition is probably what I spend the most time thinking about.
What have you enjoyed the least about managing fast growth?
I think what I probably enjoy least about fast growth is the just like the mental toll that sometimes it can take on you. Even like when things are growing and they're going well, it's very stressful. Like every week is very different. Some weeks can be amazing, some weeks can be terrible, and even like an objectively good week, but not as good as a few weeks before, can just feel like a loss. And so, and I've been in like mastermind groups with other founders, and they've had kind of similar things where they've said like, I'm just feeling really down on my business right now. I'm like, all right, well, let's take a step back. You have good MRR, you're cash flow positive, you are growing. Big picture, things are good, even if your numbers are relatively flat these last few weeks. So let's take a step back from the ledge. We're gonna be okay here. The problems that you're dealing with at this level are different from the problems that you're dealing with at a different level. And with like fast growth and getting to certain MRR numbers or certain customer numbers and things like that, there are new stresses that you deal with at these different stages. And so I think your question about like what does success look like for you is interesting, because I think it can be a long time before you feel like you're successful, even if looking at the outside or a colleague of yours would be like, oh, I would kill to have those numbers or anything like that, because the grind.
Yeah, absolutely. And I assume you guys keep a close eye on the unit economics of your SaaS business. So things like lifetime value or LTV and CAC and that important ratio between the two.
Mm.
What do you love most about growing a small business?
I think what I love most about growing a small business is seeing the impact that we're having on other people and other businesses. I really loved that in the agency days when we were working with small law firms in particular, where it was like a solo lawyer and we were building them a brand new website and helping them with their marketing. And working with them over a few years, we'd see them go from be like the solo one person shop to them being the lawyer in their town or their city, and them expand to like a huge staff. And so us having played a part in that was really magical. And like as with Postaga with the SaaS now, and seeing the impact that we're able to have for our customers' businesses is really awesome. I really love that.
What has been the biggest mindset shift for you in your small business growth journey?
Biggest mindset shift is kind of from, I think, the beginning of my journey was absolutely delegation. You can't do everything yourself. You shouldn't be doing everything yourself. And as a business owner, your time is at a certain point, it's best spent elsewhere on the big picture. A lot of people like to refer to like the E-Myth revisit and everything like that, working on the business rather than working in the business. And that's absolutely true. And the sooner you can delegate things, the better. And even if you feel like, well, no one else can do sales like I can, or no one else can do content marketing like I can, or anything like that. Well, that's all well and good, but there's only one of you, and there are only 24 hours in a day. And so you do the math, and how far can you go doing everything yourself versus with a team of people?
Yeah, totally agree. That's one of the first hurdles that entrepreneurs or small business owners need to get over, is letting go and trusting people, which also leads into recruitment. You've got to become a great recruiter to get those A players on. Otherwise, you just go down this death spiral of not trusting people because you've got the wrong people on the bus, basically.
Absolutely. And I've definitely seen that with businesses with just micromanagement, and it's like demoralizing for everybody, because you have people who want to work for you and want to prove themselves, but but like founders who are just like too close to everything, and are just not okay with anything less than perfection or the level of where they think that they would do something.
Yeah, that's right. And there's that old saying, don't let great be the enemy of perfect. Sorry, it's the other way around. Don't let perfect be the enemy of great. I haven't had enough coffee this morning, clearly. The number one habit you think a small business owner needs to develop and maintain?
Discipline. There are a lot of shiny objects that always come about. You can be having conversations with customers or colleagues and be getting new ideas, and a lot of these things can end up being a distraction. And it's why I kind of really endorse the business operating systems, if you will, like with the Rockefeller habits, which I was introduced to by the company that acquired my agency. Like having these like quarterly rocks that we'd focus on and be planning for at the beginning of each quarter was a real revelation for me, because I feel like I would just I could go from idea to idea and then have a lot of semi-finished projects and things like that were all like big important projects, but like they wouldn't get finished. And so having the discipline to say, okay, this quarter there only is a finite amount of time that I can get certain projects done related to marketing or sales or operations or pricing, positioning, user experience, things like that. So pick 3 to 4 things within each area, and those are going to be the focus. And if you come up with other ideas during the quarter, you can add them to the list and do them next quarter.
Absolutely.
If there's time.
Yeah. If everything's a priority, nothing is.
Yeah.
Jump over to growasmallbusiness.com and leave your details to get a short 2-minute email I send on Fridays to help small business owners like you become better leaders. I include some reading or professional development resources I've discovered in the last week. Can you talk to how you've added people to the team, some wins, mistakes, and advice for those listening?
So I am pretty happy about my hiring process these days. So we're a completely remote company, remote team. Everyone is around the world in different time zones. And my hiring process that has, I think, worked very well for me, and happy to share with everybody in podcast land here. So basically what I do, if I have a job posting on a particular site, in the job posting, I'll have a link to like a Google form that I'll use for the application. I'll have the candidates include a link to their resume, and I have a couple of screening questions that really get to the heart of, do they have the experience that I'm looking for? So if I'm like looking to hire someone as like a specialist in outreach, I want to know if you've used tools like our platform or other competitors' platforms. And if you've used none of these, then you don't have the experience that I'm looking for. But so that's actually an example of the kind of like screening questions. And then I'll interview people, and if they're a seemingly good candidate, what I'll do is I give a paid test project with very specific parameters. It'll only take a few hours, but I'm going to pay the person for completing the project. And this has really helped me to weed out people who interview well and look good on paper, but may not be a right fit for the position.
Yeah.
And that this has absolutely been a huge time saver, because like the worst thing would be to hire someone, train them, and then realize 2 months down the road or longer that they're just not a right fit.
Yeah, I heard about that. Is a great technique to give someone a project or give candidates a project. It was actually a good mate of mine who's got his own tech company here in Hobart. I had him on one of the early podcasts, actually. It's James McGregor, episode 6. And I remember him telling me years ago, it was quite common in tech companies, but I'm seeing a lot more businesses use this. So, you know, because you give the candidates that test project, give them a deadline, half of them won't even return the project, even though they're getting paid for it. You know, a quarter will miss the deadline. So you're down to the 25%. You certainly don't want to be looking at the first two cohorts, because they can't follow simple instructions, and then you're down to the final 25%, and you can assess the quality of their work.
That's it's funny that that's kind of been my experience also. Like, you give the project to a bunch of people, and then a lot of them, some of them just ghost you completely. And it's like, all right, well, I'm glad I didn't hire that person who just disappeared. Maybe they took a look at the project and realized that it wouldn't be a good fit for them, and that's fine. It saves us both time. Then you have some people who, so one thing I kind of learned by accident, I wish I could say it was completely intentional, but it turned out to be, I lucked out that I did it right. In part of the instructions to the project, I was a little vague, and so that requires some problem solving, critical thinking skills. And that also shows you like how your candidates think. It shows you like, are they going to be able to figure it out on their own, or try to figure it out on their own, or are they going to email you like, hey, what did you mean by this vague wording that you had? So that was also extremely helpful, stuff like that. But like, no matter what, like literally every position that I'll ever hire for, I will always have a test project. If I'm hiring a content person, I'll give everyone the same exact project. It'll be a complete waste for me. I'll have 10 copies of the same article that I've already published somewhere, or something like that. But it doesn't matter. This is me investing in my recruitment.
Yeah. What are some things you recommend to building a sustainable and kick-ass culture to help with the growth?
So for fostering a good culture, so communication is super duper important. So we're all a remote team. We're all in very different time zones at our company. And so our primary communications are asynchronous. They're on Slack. Sometimes they're via like Loom videos. And we occasionally, have team meetings over Zoom. And I haven't seen any of my colleagues in person, actually. By this point, I've only seen my co-founder in the last year. I've seen my co-founder in person once, but otherwise we're all very distributed. And so being able to communicate well over Slack and like feel like you're part of a team is very important. And so, like, to help us build our culture, we don't like I don't think we take ourselves too seriously all the time. Like, we have parts of our Slack that are a bit sillier, or a bit more about like the water cooler, if you will, because that like office environment doesn't really exist for us. But we still want to know like, hey, what did you do last weekend? Or like, check out this trip I went on. And so team building is absolutely important, like especially now as more and more teams are remote and distributed. So
Yeah.
I think also, I guess, part of creating good culture is being, as a founder, being as transparent as you can possibly be with your team and letting them take ownership over their projects and what they're responsible for. And so like me trying to get things off my plate and delegate more as a manager, you have to entrust more to your team. We have metrics. Here's what we're responsible for. Full transparency. Here's where we're at. And so here's what we can do to influence these things. And I think that transparency is much better than coming at like employee reviews and things like that with, well, I'm not happy with what we're doing right now or anything like that.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Tell our audience how you've handled balance.
The best way that I've handled balance as of recent is having a child.
Me too.
So
I had one 9 years ago this coming Wednesday, actually, and that certainly changed the way I look at work, because I have, I love what I do, and I've got a bit of an addictive personality, and I find it hard not to work. So yeah, they're a great curb on your work hours, aren't they?
Same. So yeah, when I was 25, I could, grind 16 hours a day at it, working towards this idea that I had. But now, with a young child, I have to make sure that I am able to help raise my child. Very important for me. I take her to preschool. I keep her fed and clothed and happy and play with her. And so I am more strict about the hours that I spend working, and try as best I can to be, when I'm off work, I'm off work and with the family. And that's forced me to be more disciplined about my work hours and making sure that I have better balance. And yeah, having a kid was the probably the major thing that contributed to that.
How much professional development have you invested in yourself over the years?
As far as professional development goes, I've in the early days especially, I spent a lot of money trying to learn as much as I could about marketing and running a business, and listening to all the podcasts I could, and reading everything I could. And when our agency was acquired, I stayed on with the company for a while, and I really had a mentor in the company CEO, and I just constantly wanted to pick his brain because he had a much larger, more successful company, and I wanted to learn how he was able to scale and do those things, and learn from that. And today with Postaga, we joined this Tiny Seed Accelerator program, and they have a real wonderful group of mentors that we can call on for advice whenever we need, especially the founders of Tiny Seed, Rob, Einar, and Tracy. They've been very accessible. And that part of the reason that we wanted to join Tiny Seed was in having our previous experience of growing our agency and coming up with against challenges. And really the challenges were a result of us not knowing what we didn't know. We didn't know the right way to scale things, and especially in the early days. A lot of what we found success with was via trial and error. And if we could get mentorship from people who had successful businesses and successful SaaS businesses in particular, they could help us watch out for the pitfalls that we didn't know were in the road ahead of us.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah. You've mentioned the mastermind and mentors. What about coaches? Had coaches along the way?
Never coaches specifically, but definitely like mastermind groups. That was something that I started probably in 2014. I joined a mastermind group through the Mixergy community, and I was put in a group with another agency founder and actually a few other agency founders, and it was extremely helpful to see like where they were at in their businesses and things that they were finding success with, and we could just bounce ideas off of each other. And I'm in masterminds to this day for that reason, to be able to get feedback from people I trust who have experience is really invaluable. And so I would strongly recommend, if you're whatever stage of your business you're in, find a mastermind group with people ideally who are more successful and further along in their businesses than you are, because you can learn a lot from them.
Yeah, I used to listen to Andrew Warner on the Mixergy podcast. It's quite good. I think he's got over 2,000 podcasts published now.
Yeah, check out my episode from sometime last year about selling an agency.
Okay, yeah, I will. Do you have a board of directors or advisors?
Not formally, no. We kind of, our main advisors are the Tiny Seed program.
Yep. Now, you're one of the few that we've had on that has exited a business. Do you have any advice for the audience, that may be thinking about exiting?
As soon as you can, prepare for an exit. As early in your business as you can, prepare for that, because going through a due diligence process, or the process of like evaluating the business for its financials to determine what it's worth, the more you have your ducks in a row, the better outcome you will have. With our agency, I think we did things the right way from the beginning, not fully comprehending that we were doing them the right way from the beginning, but because it made the most sense to us. For example, with a lot of agencies, we were seeing that people were like going from project to project. And because of that, like, you would have to make more sales this month, otherwise you weren't going to have any revenue coming in. So we were very focused on having recurring revenue, and having productized services so that we could better have a fixed scope on them and have a good ability to bring on new team members when needed, and have people run the business really, and like have a very set process to that. And so those kind of things, I think, made the business much more attractive to the buyers, because we had MRR. And so like, if we were to not make any sales this month, we still had revenue coming in, and that was an asset for us.
Yeah,
for sure.
And for the audience, MRR is monthly recurring revenue. And did you get any advisors to help you with the valuation that you put on the business, or your acquirer basically put that on the table for you?
So with the acquirer, we weren't really, well, this is a good story. We weren't necessarily looking to sell. They had approached us, and we knew them from the industry, because we had one of our marketing channels that was very successful for us was partnerships and co-marketing. And so we made partnerships with other companies in the space that weren't doing what we were doing, and they weren't doing what we were doing, and we weren't doing what they were doing. And so we would cross refer business. And so we got to know a lot of larger companies in the space. They would send business our way, we would send business their way. And we had a few companies reach out to us, say, like, they were partners with us, say, hey, are you interested in being acquired? Like, we're, liking working with you, and we want to get into this space that you're in. And if we could better integrate you with our services, we think it would be just a win-win. And so like that as a channel, like that partnership channel led to us getting acquired. And that was, that worked out for us.
And you didn't go looking for other offers to increase the price, or?
Oh, we absolutely did. So once the first company kind of expressed interest in buying us, we said, well, my first answer was like, they're like, hey, do you have any interest in being acquired? And I said, probably not. It wasn't something I was looking for, but if you make me an offer that I can't turn down, then we'll think about it. And so once they expressed interest and kind of gave us an idea of what their numbers were and their valuation was, then we looked around, we made it known to other companies in the space that we were thinking about getting acquired, and we got some other offers as well, and to get a gauge of what they were seeing as valuations.
Yep. And you went with the people that approached you in the end?
Yes.
Yep. Yeah, great. All right, Andy, we're on to our final 5 questions. What do you think is the hardest thing in growing a small business?
The mental toughness. It's a marathon, and I've run marathons, and I would rather run a marathon than run multiple businesses constantly. It's I think it's to be able to grow a business, scale it, like at every stage there are new challenges, and like I said earlier, every week can be very different. Some weeks can be amazing and you can be on top of the world, and other weeks you can feel like everything is doomed. So having the resolve and the discipline is very, very important.
Favorite business book which has helped you the most?
Influenced by Robert Cialdini.
I love that book. It's one of my favorite books. I still haven't finished it because I keep giving it away to people. So I've now had to buy the Audible version, so I stopped giving it away. It's great, isn't it?
It's like I felt like when I first read it, I was like, oh, of course.
Yes.
Like it was like he was putting to words things that I was like aware of, but like it was just so simply explained. These for like anyone interested in like the psychology of marketing. He talks about like concepts of like scarcity, for example, and reciprocity. And
consistency.
All of these things were just like I've internalized them, and they are a part of my marketing philosophy as I've gone in. So I can't recommend that book enough. That's the record. Yeah. The first book that I think of.
Yeah, and it's also, I love his style because he talks very personally. He's a professor in psychology and this stuff, but he talks about all the times that he's been tricked into buying shit that he didn't want to buy. The membership, I can't remember what it was for. That was hilarious. But my favorite story in that book is when he's talking to his neighbor, who's an ex-toy executive, and he was just bitching and moaning about being burnt 2 years in a row after Christmas, having to go back to the toy store to buy another present after Christmas for his kids. And that's the rule of commitment, etc., and consistency. It's a great book. Any great podcasts or online learning tools you use for your own professional development?
I guess podcast that I'm listening to right now, I really enjoy Startups for the Rest of Us. It kind of tackles startups from the perspective of bootstrapped and mostly bootstrap startups, and that's my vibe. And I really like appreciate kind of like their approach.
Yep. One tool you'd recommend to help grow a small business, apart from Postaga.
I guess. No, not gonna just immediately plug my own product there. Just one tool. I got a bunch.
Reel them off for us. Yeah.
For email marketing, I love ActiveCampaign. For project management, I love ClickUp. For making your life easier, and this is very important, I recommend automation tools like Zapier. The more routine things that you can automate, the better. I also love, speaking of like these things, I like Superhuman as an email client, and Text Expander for automating the repetitive text snippets that come up. And I guess the last one is Slack, which I use every day for team communication.
Yep. Final and my favorite question. What would you tell yourself on day one of starting out?
Forget what you're doing and go buy this thing called Bitcoin. It makes no sense right now, but someday it'll be worth $60,000.
Yes.
Now, when it hits $60,000, then sell all of it. But just trust me right now. I'm from the future. This makes no sense. And I know that in the year 2014, you're going to write a blog article that says Bitcoin is overvalued at $93.
Holy
shit.
Oh,
so
you got 2020 vision in hindsight, don't we?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you asked.
Yep. Great. Well, no, thanks very much for your time today, Andy. I think the audience got a lot of value out of it. Exited a successful digital agency startup. So you and Sam got to about 5 team members there. And in the second business, you're up to about 9 with Postaga, and you've got 20,000 people using the platform, which is phenomenal growth in a bit over 2 years since proper launch. So well done.
Thanks, Troy. Appreciate it. Love chatting with you.
And for our audience, we would greatly appreciate a review in iTunes or whatever platform you listen to us on. More reviews means we bubble up higher in iTunes, etc. So more business owners looking for podcasts to help with their growth will find us.